Thanks very much. I would like to welcome to the stage my colleague Miranda Johnson, who's going to moderate the next session.
Hello. I'm hoping that we're going to pan out a little bit, perhaps possibly towards the Asia-Pacific. To do that and to discuss politics with the sort of next generation and politics and young people, I'd like to welcome to the stage Kun Thanathorn, who is the leader of the Future Forward Party in Thailand. And I'd also like to ask Tim Wilson from Australia's House of Representatives to join me. Thank you. So, wherever you like. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. I think I'll perhaps start with you, Thanathorn, if I may, because I mean your party and your movement. It's also been a kind of breakneck 18 months. I'm not sure if people in the room are aware, but in March 2018, Future Forward sort of first emerged, and then about a year later, in elections in Thailand, it actually became the third largest party. So there was a sort of huge surge in knowledge and awareness and support. And so, in a sense, you're also a political disruptor. Just one perhaps more inside the system. Mm-hmm. I wondered if you could tell us perhaps what you learnt along the way. I mean, why you decided to get involved in the messy game of politics, and whether you still have the kind of optimism that Future Forward can get the things done that it was set up to do.
You see, over the past 5 years, since the military junta seized the power in 2014, they have cracked down on political oppositions. They have taken control of the large swaths of the media. They suppressed the free speech and human rights. They brutally repressed the human rights activists and civic campaigners. They drafted the new constitution by themselves and for themselves. They rigged the election. So back then in 2017, my friends and I, we thought that there's no hope left in this country. And somebody has to stand up and do something. Somebody has to stand up and confront the military junta. So I decided that if there's no political parties out there, existing political parties out there ready to do this, ready to confront them, ready to challenge them, we have to stand up and do it ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that's why we started this political party. So it's been, the journey has been 18 months long, so it's still very young. We are still imperfect as a political party. There's a lot of things we have to learn, but one thing that is clear, that this party is not about just about public policies, but I think it's a political project of the people of our generation. You know, in my country, there's been, in the past 87 years, since the democratic revolution in 1932, there has already been 13 coups d'etats, more than any other country in the world. And because of so many coups, democratic institutions were not allowed to build strongly. So I think that's our mission, that this thing should end within our generation. Coup d'etat has to be history in Thailand, so that the people of the next generation could fight their own fight. You know.
And it's one thing to be an opposition movement. Mm-hmm. Since Future Forward's members came into the lower house in Thailand, mm-hmm. What are the lessons being learnt now? It's more difficult, perhaps, to try and be part of the system than to just oppose it.
I think it's clear that in order to change, in order to bring down the junta, the regime, you need both movements outside the parliament as well as a voice inside the parliament. So I think this has to go together. There's no other way you can, build the momentum without the force outside and the force inside.
Thanathorn, do you think that the moment that Tim refers to, the sort of moment for change, the moment has come in Thailand, perhaps for the next generation that wants to move beyond the old divisions in the country between red and yellow?
Well, I think red and yellow shirt movement that happens over the past decade is a manufactured crisis. I mean, if you look at the political crisis in Thailand, the junta, they divide us, they polarize us, they want to divide and conquer the people. So it's very important that there is a conflict between the people, so that they could paint the picture in a way that democracy is the problem, dictatorship the solution. I think that's what they want to paint. That's what they want people to see. So I think, and those who benefit, those who manage to capitalize on these conflicts is the big capitals, few influential families and individuals that have close connection to the junta. These are the people who benefit from this. In 2018, the Credit Suisse, a bank, released a report on the gap between the rich and the poor. And Thailand has become the worst in the world. The richest 1% controls about 67% of the country's wealth. 67% of the country's wealth, the worst in the world. And it has gone worse since 2016. The same report released third, behind Russia and India. And by 2018, we were the worst. So I think there's a close link between inequality and the ruling of the junta. So what we are trying to do is that, look, the division between the people, the yellow and the red shirt, this division is wrong. The real division is a horizontal division. The people as a whole against the junta. So that's the new picture we're trying to paint.
And I wanted to ask just one question before I open it up to the floor. But both of you are, elected representatives. I appreciate, Thanathorn, you've barely been able to actually, go into Parliament, given the legal cases stacking up against you and your party. But you both saw the poll we had at the beginning that said that the vast majority of respondents thought that democracy was in decline. Thanathorn, perhaps start with you. Does that depress you, given how hard you're fighting in your country to try and restore more democratic norms?
Just for your information, I think the establishment, the junta, they're just terrified of the existence of our party, because our voters are young. So what they did was they suspend me from entering to the parliament, even though I'm elected from the people. Coming back to your question, I think I am hopeful. You see, Thailand is a best case example of what could happen if democracy and human rights are taken for granted. In the 1990s, Thailand was a vibrant democracy. We were an example to hundreds of millions of people in mainland Southeast Asia, in Burma, in Laos, in Cambodia, in Vietnam. Hundreds of millions of people still living under authoritarian regimes. So we believe that a democratic Thailand could contribute more to the region. But this is what happened if you don't stand up and protect democracy and human rights. So I think that is the mistake, and the price is high. We have been in this political conflict for 13 years already. 13 years. So the price is really high, and I would like to ask all of us, all of you, that you need to protect human rights, no matter where it happens. It's about all of us. We need to protect democracy. Otherwise, you could end up being like Thailand.
And perhaps for a final, very quick question, I could return to you, Thanathorn. You've spent time in Hong Kong. You mentioned you studied here. I wondered whether you had thoughts on the current situation here. And, it's interesting that you are leading a movement, and yet this is a leaderless one.
Well, actually, what happened in Hong Kong over the past few years also inspired us. Let me take you back in 2018 when we were trying to make this decision whether to form a party. There was actually there were two options back then, whether should it be a movement or whether should it be a political party. There was a big debate within the founding members of the party. Should we organize it as a political movement or a political party? And we ended up as a political party because, the wound of the 2010 crackdown was still very fresh. In 2010, the military crackdown, there were more than 100 people shot dead, 1,000 more wounded because of the crackdown. And we realized that they were ready to do anything in their powers, to preserve the status quo. So we thought maybe the public is not ready, to have another big movement. The fear still inside the hearts and the minds of the people. So we said, okay, then if we cannot do it as a movement, then the only alternative left is the political party. So I think, in a way, Hong Kong inspires us.
That's a wonderful note to end on. Please thank my panelists with me.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was great. Thanks. Thank you very much.